Hi, I'm Madam Pamita, and I want to say a big welcome to you as we embark on a journey together to learn all about designing your own complex candle spells through my Advanced Candle Magic Secrets workshop. If you're brand new to candle magic, you might want to take my Beginning Candle Magic Foundations on demand workshop before you take this course so that you have a strong foundation of understanding. But if you're already familiar with candle magic, then you're definitely going to expand your skills in ways you've never imagined with these bite-sized lessons that will look at some mind-blowing techniques for creating powerful spells utilizing detailed supports that you may have never considered before. If you're ready to make some really amazing magic, then buckle up your seatbelt and get ready for some advanced candle magic secrets. All right, so in this workshop, we're going to be looking at so much today. So we're going to be looking first at reviewing the basics. I think that's good to get started when we're looking at candle magic, to first give a very quick review of what you should already know. Again, if you don't know these basics, you might want to go back and take the Beginning Candle Magic Foundations workshop. So before you get started here. Next, we'll be looking at how you design a spell. And the beginning of that is, of course, choosing the candles. We're going to go over all the different types of candles that are out there, what they're good for, what their advantages, pros and cons, and so on. And we'll look at those as we look at choosing candles. Next, we're going to be looking at numerology in candle spells and looking at how numbers can add an extra element of support to our candle magic. After that, we'll be looking at advanced timings. Some of those include that numerology, but we'll be looking at some advanced timings beyond just waxing and waning moon and days of the week and so on. Multi-candle spells. Well, this is where we get into beautiful complex spells, looking at multiple candles and how we can incorporate them in our spells to truly customize a complex spell. Then we'll be looking at multi-day spells and how we can bring numerology into this and do spells over the course of a certain number of days to bring in the energy of that number to support our magic. After that, we'll be looking at candle spell layouts and ideas that we can use to create some interesting dynamics with shape and using candles and powders and other things to create those layouts. Then we'll start looking at candle magic divination. Just a quick overview of these concepts because there are more in-depth workshops on all of these. But first we'll be looking at pyromancy, which is candle flame reading. Then we'll be looking at capnomancy, which is candle smoke reading. Finally, we'll be looking at ceromancy, which is candle wax reading. All of these can give us more information about our spells so that we know what we need to do next or what we need to do to support our intention. Then we'll talk about how you create a complex candle plan, and finally, what you want to record for your candle spells in your grimoire. So we got a lot of stuff to cover. So go ahead, buckle up, and we're going to get started at looking at these amazing advanced candle magic secrets. As we get started, we're first going to look at reviewing the basics. These are the things that we need to know just so that we're all on the same page before we get started with our candle spell. So first, how do we create a basic candle spell? Well, if you want to focus your intention and you bring in elements to support that, that's a real basic concept. Your intention, of course, is the key to every spell, but we bring in support, just like we bring in our entourage or we bring in our friend group. Well, whenever we have to go someplace where we might feel a little bit nervous, it always helps when we have friends around. And when we're doing a spell, it always helps to have these extra elements that support our focused intention. First of all, our words can support that. Now we can put words on a petition paper, we can speak our words in an incantation, and we can inscribe our words on a candle. Those are all ways that we can bring in words to our candle spell. Colors, of course, are an important part of candle magic. We went over this in the beginning Candle Magic Foundations class. You can also find information about color magic in my book, The Book of Candle Magic. Herbs, flowers, and roots, these are all beautiful, vital pieces of nature that we can bring in to support our candle spell work. So think about these things as we're working with them, but we're going to be looking at how we can work with these things in even more complex and more empowered ways. Oils, of course, are really important in spell work because oils allow us to put herbs directly onto a candle, and oils add that extra element of the essential oils and the flowers and plants that are associated with those essential oils. Timing when we start our candle spell, that's one of the beautiful things about candle magic is we can incorporate timing into our spells. So we're going to be looking at some advanced timings beyond just looking at the phases of the moon, and we're going to be working with some of those as we learn these advanced candle magic secrets. If you want to get that foundation, you can take the Beginning Candle Magic Foundations workshop or check out my book, The Book of Candle Magic. So now that we understand all of those basic things that go into a basic candle spell, what else can we add to our spell work to make it even more empowered and more customized? Well, for advanced candle spells and what we're going to be learning today, we can bring in multiple candles, not just work with one candle, but we can work with a number of candles. And when we start working with numerology, or if we want to bring in different elements, multiple candles are a great way to do that. We'll also be looking at advanced timings, some more particular timings and things that will help our spell work to launch in a very strong way. Numerology is going to be huge in this advanced candle magic course because it shows up in our timings, it's going to show up in our number of candles and so on. So we're going to be talking in depth about numerology. Layout is also something that we can bring to our candle spells. How we position our candles and the herbs and the powders around our candles can create also some extra juice for our candle spell. Now, we don't have to bring all of these to our spell, our advanced candle magic spell, but we can look at all of them and you can choose a few to support your spell work. Of course, it makes sense that if we are going to be working with candles and we're going to be doing a candle spell, probably the first decision you have to make is choosing your candle. There are so many different candles to choose from. How do you know which one is right? Well, we'll be talking about each of those kinds of candles and what they're good for, what their advantages are, what their disadvantages are. So the first candle option that I want to bring up is the taper candle. Taper candles are long, slim candles. Like this picture here shows you a bunch of taper candles. They can range in size from 5 or 6 inches all the way up to 24 inches and more. These are long, slim candles that are used to burn over time. Now, originally taper candles were used to provide light in a room. And so they have a long burning time and they're long and slim to allow for that burn to take a long time. So one of the advantages of a taper candle is that you can choose a size that fits a timing for your spell. For example, if you have to do a spell really, really quickly, you can choose a tiny taper or a birthday candle, and that candle will burn in 5 or 10 minutes. It won't take long to burn completely, and you can get your spell off and completed in that amount of time. And that makes sense if you have a very urgent topic or you have to keep your candle magic hidden from others and you can't have a candle sitting around burning. Now, with a larger taper, you can take more time, obviously. And with a tall taper or a very tall taper, you can segment it into different amounts and burn it over many hours or many days. And you can have lots of options in that. Now, what the disadvantages of a taper are, of course, is that it doesn't leave a lot of room for inscriptions, especially these little tiny candles, like a birthday candle. You can't really inscribe on it. And it doesn't really have any particular symbolism to it. It's just a tall, skinny piece of wax. So it doesn't necessarily carry that symbolism with it. But tapers are easy to get. They're certainly easy to work with. You need a candle holder for them, or you can place them on a tray by melting the bottom of them. The next type of candle that we're looking at is a pillar candle. So pillar candles are tall and slim, or they can be short and squat, and they have a wider base to them. So usually a pillar candle will stand on its own. You do need to have a tray of some kind or a candle holder of some kind to hold the wax, because the wax may melt. But otherwise, a pillar candle is like a very, very thick taper candle. Now, the advantages to a pillar candle is that you can inscribe on a pillar candle. There's lots of room for you to write words or spells or incantations or designs. You can decorate them. They burn for a long time. So if you have a spell that you need to burn really quickly, then you want to make sure you choose a really small pillar candle, or choose a smaller candle like a taper. But if you need a candle that you want to burn for many, many days, then a pillar candle can be great for that. One of the disadvantages to pillar candles is sometimes pillar candles will tunnel, which means that the wax goes right down the middle, and that then the wick starts to drown in the pool of wax. So you have to kind of tend to pillar candles a little bit, make sure you pour off the wax, or you pay attention to them, or cut a channel in the side with a knife so that the wax can pour out. But pillar candles are great. They're very functional. They're easy to get. You can get them in a lot of places, and they're kind of nondescript, but maybe that's an advantage too. If you want to burn a spell and you don't want people to know you're burning a spell, then a taper candle or a pillar candle are great, because usually people don't think of them as spell candles. The next type of candle that we're going to examine are vigil and jar candles. So vigil candles are glass encased. They're sometimes called sanctuary candles or church candles, 7-day candles, novena candles. And jar candles are like Yankee candles. They're usually in a fatter kind of glass jar, but both of these kinds of candles are glass encased candles. Usually the candle comes with the glass both together, but we also have other versions where you can have a pop out that you can put into the glass container and reuse that glass container over and over again. Advantages to glass encased candles is they burn for a long time. They are fairly safe. There's not really an open flame, but the glass can sometimes break, particularly if you put too many herbs in a glass encased candle, and those herbs get very, very hot. They can cause the candle to break, but they're generally slightly safer than an open flame candle or a freestanding candle. Another advantage to jar candles are that you can put pictures on the outside of the glass. You can put stickers, pictures, or write things or paint them with paint pens. Votive candles are smaller versions of a jar candle. Usually with votive candles, they come with the candle and the votive glass separate, and you can reuse them over and over again with votive candles. The advantage to votive candles is that they're small and they can burn in pretty much one day. Vigil candles, depending on their size, can take a week or longer to burn. But votive candles are quite nice if you have a quick spell to do, and they are relatively safe because they're encased in glass. Again, you don't want to put too many oils or herbs in those candles because they can catch fire and break the glass. Figural candles, well, these are my favorite, of course. We make lots of figural candles here at the Parlour of Wonders. And one of the reasons I love figural candles is because of the symbolic shapes. When we have the shape of something, it evokes something for us at our soul level. So it's like our collective unconscious has understanding of these symbols that these figural candles have. So figural candles are wonderful for spells. They evoke an extra element of symbolism. They're beautiful to work with. They look very magical. So if you're working with a figural candle, you can definitely, it looks like a spell when you're working with a figural candle, but you can create some quite beautiful layouts and beautiful designs with your spell work, and you add that extra element of symbolism. Floating candles are still another type of candle. Floating candles will float on water. So if you're working with special waters or you want to add a candle spell to your bath spell, then floating candles are the way to go. They're shaped in kind of flat shapes so that they float easily on water, and usually they're made of paraffin. So all of these beautiful candles are different, have different qualities to them that make them special, and they're easy to work with. And you may want to pick one or another because of the circumstances in your life, or how complex you want to get, or how witchy you want to get with your candle spell. Now, when you're choosing a candle, the first thing to ask yourself is, what is the objective of your spell? The objective of your spell is going to dictate some of the choices that you make. If your candle spell is something that you're going to be wanting ongoing, then you might work with a bigger candle or one that burns for a longer time. If you need something quickly, then you're going to want to work with a smaller candle. That also goes along with, how long do I want to burn the candle? If you ask yourself if it's something you need very quickly, then you might not want to use like a big giant pillar candle or a glass encased vigil candle. You might want to go with something smaller. Do you want to incorporate color? So color is not available in all candles, or not readily available. We have lots of colors in our candles. We have tapers and we have figural candles and more at the Parlour of Wonders. And you might want to choose a color that supports your candle intention. And so that may be a consideration when choosing a candle. Do you want to use symbolism in your spell? On a pillar candle, you can inscribe symbols, but you can also get a figural candle that has the symbol that you want to use. And that can be a great way to incorporate symbolism in your spell and really power up your spell. Next, you want to ask yourself, do you want a candle that is mass produced in a factory, or do you want one that's made by a spiritual worker? That's important for some people. It's when you create something or when you work with something, I think of candle spells really being an offering. And are you making an offering of something that is very intentional, or something that's made by a minimum wage worker in a machine in a factory? That's something you might want to consider in terms of adding some extra energy to your spell work. You also might want to look at different kinds of wax that you can use. We make beeswax candles at the Parlour of Wonders because beeswax is very helpful for saving bee populations, because beekeepers that make the wax take good care of their bees. But it is also a very clean burning wax. It's clean for the air. Paraffin candles are made with byproducts from petroleum, and they have some chemicals in them that can be toxic if you burn too many paraffin candles. So you might want to pay attention to the kind of wax that you're using. Palm wax is okay, but palm wax also is problematic because of deforestation. Soy wax is also okay, but soy is a product that's often heavily produced with chemicals and pesticides, and so those get into the wax as well. So you may want to do your due diligence before using those wax. But we do know that beeswax is very healthful and very safe to use, and is also the highest quality wax that you can get. It's a little pricier, but it's worth it for your health. Now, you can adapt your spell to your candle, or you can choose a candle for your spell. What do I mean by that? Well, sometimes you have a candle and you might have it sitting around, and you might say, oh, now's the time for me to do this spell with this candle. Or if you start out with your spell intention, you can choose a special candle for your spell. So either way, you can have a candle that you already have and adapt it to your spell, or you can choose a special candle for your intention that really lines up with your intention, with color, with wax, with symbolism, and so on. Now, when it comes to advanced candle magic, we cannot overstate the importance of numerology. Numerology is going to show up over and over again in this workshop. So it's important that we cover this first, and then we're going to go into all the ways we can use numerology to enhance our spells. So when we're using numerology in candle magic, it can show up in a number of ways. First, it can start with starting a candle at a certain time of the day. Numerology shows up also in multi-candle spells and burning a single candle over a certain number of days. We can also get into more complex things like multi-candle, multi-day spells, or burning a candle for a certain period of time. And of course, adding a certain number of herbs or talismans to our spells. Now, when we talk about the power of numbers, in general, odd numbers are dynamic and even numbers are stabilizing. So if you don't have to memorize all these different numbers and what they mean, of course, we have this in the Book of Candle Magic. You can always look it up there or look it up on numerology websites. But in general, odd numbers are dynamic and action-oriented, and even numbers are still stabilizing. Now, when we want to reduce a number from a larger number into a single digit, because when we're working with numerology, we're working with single digits, we might have to reduce a number to get there. So for example, if we have the number 21, let's say we want to use our birth date as a special key in a spell to link the spell to us, for example, and let's say our birthday's on the 21st. So we might use that number 21. We don't have to bring in 21 candles or add 21 herbs or burn it for 21 days. We can reduce that number. And the way we reduce that number is by adding the digits together. So by adding 2 and 1 together, we get the number 3. So 3 will be our key number. So when you think about your own spell and which number supports your intention, you can always reduce a larger number down to a single digit, or you can use those single digits to support your spell work. So let's talk about those single digits. First of all, the number 1. 1 is all about beginnings, unity, newness, focused concentration, independence, originality. Think about 1, like I'm number 1, right? It's all about the individual and the power of the individual and the beginning of something. So if you're starting something new, you can always use 1 candle, 1 herb, or use the number 1 in your spell. Number 2 is about duality, partnership, division, choice, cooperation, harmony, support, diplomacy. Think about 2 people together. You're a partnership, right? And so the number 2 is about bringing things together in harmony, in support. And you can use it for spells that have to do with any of these topics. Number 3, of course, represents all the magical trinities, the trinity of Maiden, Mother, Crone, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, all of those trinities that we think of. It's also the union of the divine and human. We think about humanity and divine energy, and 3 brings that number to us. 3 is also about expression, creativity, and optimism. 4 is about material concerns. You think about like 4 sides of a building or a wall. It's about material concerns, practicality, orderliness, logic, hard work, loyalty, responsibility, all those very stable things that we think about when we think about the number 4. 5 is another dynamic number. It has to do with adventure and adaptability, creating change, bringing in freedom, inviting exploration, bringing in some variety. 5 is also a number of sensuality and curiosity. So if those are elements that you want to bring to your spell, then you can bring the number 5 into your spell work. 6 is about beauty and harmony, balance, nurturing, understanding, healing, duty and service. 6 is a number that's sacred to the goddess Aphrodite. And 6 is a number of sides on the hexagram that bees create when they create their beehives. So you think about that service, that duty, that community, that harmony and balance, those all go along with the number 6. The number 7 is about spirituality. It's also about good luck, right? Lucky number 7. We also think of number 7 about being about philosophy and wisdom, faith, our divine nature, and religion. So if we're working in ways with spirit, or we're working with divine energies and spirituality, we might want to bring in the number 7. Number 8 is about achievement, strength, and self-discipline. It's about power, success, authority, manifestation. 8 is a great number when you want to manifest something or you want to have great success with something. And number 9 is about completion, culmination, your wishes coming true. It's about change, but about change in terms of graduation or evolution. Like you're ready for your next step. You're ready to close the chapter on one thing and bring in a new thing. Number 9 is the number you want to bring in. Now we're going to be talking about some advanced timing, some of which incorporate numerology. Now, in the beginning Candle Magic Foundations class, we talked about some basic timings. Basic spell timings could be about choosing the day to start our spell. Of course, that's what our traditional timing is, the day that we start our spell. We can use phases of the moon, waxing and waning phase, for example. Or we can use astrological timings where we bring in the moon, the sign the moon's in or the sun's in, or we can bring in days of the week. These are all covered in that course. So if you want to know more about these, go back to the beginning Candle Magic Foundations class where we talk more about these. But today we're going to be looking at some other timing methods that you can add or use instead of these basic timings. The first one we want to look at is time of day. The time when you start your candle or light it on each day can support your spell intention. We'll go back to numerology. You can look at repeating numbers. Like if you look at a digital clock and it's 111 or 222 or 333 and so on, we can use those numbers up until 6, up until 555. Then we can use 606, 707, 808. And use those repeating numbers to bring that energy to our spell work. We can also think about working with the sun as part of the time of day. Sunrise being a great time for working with spells where we want to bring something in, dawn. Noon, when we want to reach the pinnacle or the peak of success. Dusk, when the sun is going down, when we want to do magic of releasing and letting go. And midnight, when we want to do the witching hour work, where we're working with psychic abilities, or we're working with our shadow side, or other more mystical things, we can work at midnight. Another way we can work with time of the day is by using the rising and falling hands of the clock. So if you imagine this clock, an analog clock like this one, has 2 hands on it, an hour hand and a minute hand. And if we divide this clock in half from the 12 all the way down to the 6, we've got 2 halves. We've got a half where the hands will be going down from 12 to 6, and we've got a half where the hands will be going up from 6 to 12. We can use this like we use the waxing and waning moon. If both hands of the clock are on the right half of the clock face, that's a great time for us to be doing spells of banishing, releasing, and letting go. If the clock hands are on the left side, like they are here, the clock hands will be going up. And this is great for doing spells where we want to invoke something or bring something in. And that's another way we can work with the time of day. We can also work with planetary hours. The planetary hours system was developed in ancient Greece. And for Greek people, when they were creating this, they created 12 segments of daylight and 12 segments of darkness. So each day was divided into 12 segments, and you would think, oh, well, that would be 12 hours of daylight and 12 hours of darkness. Nope, that only happens on the equinoxes when the night and the day are equal. The rest of the year, those segments are either going to be longer or shorter than an hour. In the time when the days are getting longer, of course, then the hours of the daylight are going to be longer than an hour, and the hours of the nighttime are going to be shorter, and vice versa when the days are getting shorter. So each segment corresponds to a planet. And so if you look at hours 1 through 12 on Sunday, they correspond to these different planets. So if you want to do this, you can do it mathematically, and you can use an online calculator, or you can use an app that figures it out for you. There's an app here at astrology.com.tr/planetary-hours.asp that will tell you how to do that. And there are also apps for your phone that will give you the planetary hours. Now, when we work with the planetary hours, we're going to be working with the different planets, and those different planets have different energies. Now, these also correspond to some of the days of the week, and so we can use these in days of the week as well. So the sun has to do with health, your job, leadership, fame, presentations, and authority. And this also applies to Sunday. So if you wanted to double this up, you could go to the planetary hour of the sun on a Sunday and double up this power. The moon has to do with intuition, psychic work, imagination, dreams, family. And this also applies to Monday. So you can use the planetary hour of the moon to enhance this type of work. And if you did it on a Monday, you would also have the power of the day of the week. Mercury corresponds to spells of communication, negotiations, gambling, and intelligence. Mercury also applies to Wednesday. So Wednesday is the day of the week for Mercury, and you can use the hour of Mercury to enhance these topics. Venus is the planet of love. So we can, of course, use our Venus hour for spells about love, beauty, sex, harmony, prosperity, and pleasure. And Venus also corresponds to the day Friday. So you can use the planetary hour of Venus on a Friday and double up that energy. Mars corresponds to spells of aggression, courage, vitality, strategizing, victory, and competition. Mars is also corresponds to the day Tuesday. So if you wanted to use the planetary hour of Mars, you could do it on a Tuesday and double up that energy. Jupiter has to do with politics, power, wealth, success, leadership, and expansion. Jupiter corresponds to the day Thursday, so you can use the Jupiter hour on a Thursday and double up that energy. Saturn has to do with organization, motivation, will, limitations, and boundaries, and corresponds to Saturday. Now, when you're doing spell timings, plan a time of day that you would like to add your spell work. You can think about a time of day in addition to, for example, the moon or the astrology or any of the other systems that you use. It can be in addition to your chosen day or instead of choosing a special day to do a spell. We can also use all that good numerology information by doing multi-candle spells. We don't have to use numerology, but we can use numerology. So we can choose a number of candles that supports our intention. We don't have to. We might choose our candles based on what extra things we might want to bring into our spell, but we could definitely choose a number that supports our intention. We could prepare identical candles or give each candle a different aspect of the same spell. What do I mean by that? For example, we could use 4 candles because we want to bring in that stability of the number 4, and they could be 4 all the same color and with the same oils on them. Or we could bring 4 candles with 4 different colors and 4 different oils and 4 different herbs on them to bring in different aspects to customize our spell a little bit more. Now, when we bring in multiple candles, we can burn them consecutively, meaning we can burn them one at a time, or we can burn them simultaneously. We might burn the candles consecutively because we want to focus on each aspect or have a sense of our spell having timing and change. And maybe we can even time those candles to a timing that we add. So we might light them at different planetary hours or different days of the week or so on. We can also burn the candles simultaneously, and that means all of the elements of the spell are blended together. When we do multi-candle spells, we can also incorporate a moving candle spell. We can turn it into a moving candle spell. Candles can be moved toward or away from each other, and that's called a moving candle spell. So for example, if we want to move something towards something else, we could physically move that candle to bring those things together. Or if we wanted things to separate or move apart, we can drive those things apart by moving those candles apart day by day or hour by hour. They can be moved over hours or days. The thing that I recommend, however, is that when you do move a candle, that you don't move a lit candle, because that wax can spill on your hands and can be painful. So snuff your candles out, let them cool down, and then move them, and then light them. Now we can work with multiple candles by having a master candle and support candles. The master candle would be the main candle. That usually is a figural candle of some kind or a larger candle of some kind. And those support candles are extra candles that provide energetic support. Now, when we think about numerology, we can also start to think about multi-day candle spells. So multi-day candle spells can be burning a single candle over a chosen number of days. Or some candles that we have are actually designed to be burned over multiple days, like a 7 knob candle, for example, which is meant to be burned 1 knob at a time over 7 days. Or the 3 wise monkeys candle, which has 3, it's like 3 candles in one, and you burn 1 monkey per day over 3 days. If you have a pillar candle or a taper candle, you can segment it off either by creating a line on it or by sticking nails or pins in the side of the candle. You can do it by measuring it off, or you can do it by eyeballing it, which is just looking and dividing it up. Now, whenever you do this, you want to make sure that you choose an appropriate size candle for your work. Meaning, if you wanted to burn a candle for 9 days, a teeny tiny candle really isn't ideal for that. You'd need a much taller taper or a much taller pillar for that. We can also do multi-candle, multi-day spells. That way we have a number of candles and we burn a certain number each day, 1 or 2 each day, for example. We can choose a number of candles and burn a certain number each day, or we can choose a number of candles and burn 1 each day. So for example, we could burn 9 candles and we could burn 3 each day for 3 days. Or like this example here, we could have 13 candles and burn 2 each day for 6 days and burn the center one on the 7th day. So think about your multiple candle spells and whether you want to burn your candles consecutively or simultaneously. Now we're getting into some more creative and exciting things, and really areas that you can let your imagination go. And that is in candle spell layouts. So candle spell layouts are bringing in symbolism into your candle spell. You can inscribe your candle, you dress it with oils and herbs, and then you place it on a tray or a dish. And when you do that, you can start to create some meaningful symbols or shapes in that layout of those candles and how you arrange them. Shapes can be made with the candles themselves, or they can be made with herbs or sachet powders. These are all of the things that we can use to create some interesting designs and patterns and layouts. So the first thing we can think about is bringing in line. So a line that is perpendicular, like these lines here, can be blocking, dividing, or separating. So we're using these lines to separate these two figures, for example. Horizontal lines are connection or coming together or going on a journey of some kind. So these lines here are connecting these two candles, for example. Wavy lines like this one are about confusion or mystical journeys or psychic abilities. This point here of these three candles is like the point of an arrow, and it's like an arrow with a wavy line. So the arrow can indicate movement or direction. We're wanting this person to have a confusing journey and for them to move in that direction away from this person. We can also bring circles into our candle spell layouts. Here we have a circle of herbs around these two figural candles here. Circles represent unity, completion, wholeness, and harmony. We also have a triangle in this spell with those three support candles. Triangles represent movement, increase, and attainment. Squares represent stability, boundary, and structure, and we have a square dish with a square around our candles. We also have a triangle because there's another candle behind this marriage candle that you can't see, and that triangle represents movement, direction, and success. And finally, we can bring an X shape. The X shape can represent the four elements: air, fire, water, and earth. It can be the meeting of the spiritual and material. It can be crossing out something. It can be for protection, or it can be for reaching out in all directions, like the crossroads. When we have 4 points with a spot in the middle, that's called a quincunx, and that represents the 5 elements: air, fire, water, earth, and spirit. It can also represent intersections and crossroads. So we have another candle behind this figural candle, and we have that 5 points that look like the 5 on the side of a die, and that's a quincunx. So you can plan or create a shape or symbol that supports your intention and how you incorporate that with herbs, powders, or candles. There are so many different layouts. These are just the basic ones. If you want to find more, you can check them out in the Book of Candle Magic, my book about candle magic. Now we're getting into some fun candle divination. The first form of divination we're going to look at is pyromancy, which is flame reading. Candle divination is a great practice because it can give us feedback about our spell or our intention. It's a little bit like having a reading after we do a spell to find out where things are, where things stand, and where things are going, and what else we need to do. Pyromancy is about reading the flame. Capnomancy is about reading smoke. And ceromancy is about reading the wax remains. Now we're going to touch on all 3 of these, but if you want to learn more, you should check out the pyromancy and capnomancy workshop. And if you want to learn more about ceromancy, check out the ceromancy workshop. Now, whenever we're looking at reading the flame, reading the smoke, or reading the wax remains, the very first thing I say is check to see if you see something unusual. Check to see if there are any real world reasons for the candle event, right? If you have a dancing flame, but it's because there's an air conditioner blowing, that's not anything that you would read. Or if your candle keeps blowing out because you have a window open, then that is not a sign that you're going to read. So the first thing you want to do is you want to check and see if there are any real world reasons for what you're seeing in the flame, smoke, or wax remains. With any spell, I believe that you should correct the candle as you go. So if you see a flame that's burning very low, you can pour off some of the candle wax or cut a channel in the candle wax so that the candle burns with a higher flame. If the flame is too high, you can trim back the wick and so on. So correct the candle as you go so that it has an ideal burn. Pyromancy is flame reading. So with pyromancy, what we're looking for is a steady, even burn. That's the ideal. This is a really nice example in this photo of an ideal burn. Flame is not too high, it's not crazy smoky, it's not too low, it's just right. Now, if there are any issues, again, first look at the real world causes and then correct any issues to bring that candle back to its ideal burn. Trim your wicks or pour off the wax. Trim the wick if it's burning too hot or too high or smoky. Pour off the wax if it's burning too low. Cut channels in the side of the candle if the candle is burning too low. It's another option besides pouring off the wax. Now, if your candle flame, if you do all these things and your candle flame continues to burn high or burn very fast, that can mean that the energy is really high, really hot. So that can mean lots of passion. Passion can be sexual passion or can be anger. It can be that your results are going to come quickly as well. If your candle flame is burning weakly or slowly, it can mean that your results are going to be slower to come to you, but your results may be longer lasting. If your candle flame alternates between strong and weak, it means an inconsistent energy to your spell. Is there something you can do to make more consistency? If it's a love spell, it may mean the person's hot and cold. If it's a success spell, it means perhaps that you have bursts of energy, but then you have times that you're burnt out. So try to take some real world action to change the situation when you see a flame alternating between strong and weak. If your candle flame goes out, again, look for a source for that candle flame going out, and then work with the candle to get it lit again. You might have to add an extra wick or play with the wick a little bit to get it going again, or pour off some wax or do some other kind of action to get it going again. But if your candle flame continues to go out, and by that I mean it goes out 3 times, it may mean that your spell you need to rethink your spell. Maybe it's a different intention or trying to timing wise get to a better timing with your spell. If something catches fire, then first of all, you don't want that to happen. First, check to see if you added too many flammable herbs to your spell. Too many herbs can catch fire and can create those problems. Put the fire out. First things first, put that fire out. Secondly, check to see if there are real world reasons for that, like having too many herbs or other flammables on your candle. If that isn't the case and your candle catches fire, it may be this is extreme passion. This may be burnout. This may be things getting very hot very quickly, and something could happen perhaps negatively because of that. If you've got knots in your wick, this is carbon buildup on your wick, trim that wick back. That's the first thing to do. Knots can mean you might have to untangle something to get to your result. So there may be more work to be done to get to your good result. If your flame is talking, chattering, first see if it's a candle that has some water in it. Sometimes water gets into the candle and that can create those popping noises. So if you have a poorly made candle, it might do some talking. But if your candle is a quality candle and it's doing this chattering, it may mean your spirits are talking to you, or if you're doing a spell on someone else that they wish to talk to you. If you have a flickering or dancing flame, it means there's a lot of action around the spell. It can mean frivolity, playfulness. It can also mean that inconsistency as well, depending on your spell. Now we're going to look at capnomancy. Capnomancy is reading the smoke. So smoke reading is generally done on glass encased candles. We're going to be looking at smoke on the glass. We want to avoid false negatives by not overloading jar candles or vigil candles with too many herbs or oils. Those adulterants can get smoky when they're burned and create false negatives. Also, if you're having a smoky candle, fix the problem, trim the wick. Do things to make sure that your candle isn't smoky. Trim the wicks, or you can wipe off your smudges as well. Now, ideally, a clear glass is what we're looking for with a glass encased candle. We want to find a glass that's clear all the way down with no smoke on it. That's our ideal. Smoke represents spiritual issues. So no smoke or no soot represents that all is well and in spiritual alignment for your outcome. However, if there is smoke, light gray or white smoke represents help from our spirit guides. Your spirit guides are saying, hey, we can help you. If you have dark soot, that represents spiritual blockages to your outcome. So however dense the soot is represents how big the block is, and how far down the soot goes down on the glass represent how much work it will take and how long it will take to overcome those blocks. Now we're going to talk about ceromancy, everybody's favorite, which is candle wax reading. Ceromancy is reading the wax remains of a candle, and we read the candles differently, whether they're freestanding candles or whether they're glass encased candles. In a glass encased candle, if we have some excess wax at the bottom of the candle, that means that there is some material work to do to achieve your goal, meaning you have to take some action. The more wax that's at the bottom that's left over, the more work you have to do. You can also look for herbs and wax that make shapes on the sides of the glass, and you can read those like tea leaves. So if you see a shape in them and it looks like an animal or a figure, then you can interpret it symbolically like you would tea leaves. On a freestanding candle, on a tray, excess wax is really normal. This is a really normal burn right here. So what we look for when we do candle wax reading are pillars. Pillars are areas that need our attention or where blockages need to be removed. Pillars are wax strips that still are standing up, straight up, like this one here. It's hard to see because we're looking from above. Overflow, we're also looking to see if there's overflow. If your candle tray is the right size, it wasn't too small, and we have some candle wax overflowing like we do with this yellow candle up here, we can look and see what candle was overflowing, and that can tell us where there's too much outgoing energy. Maybe you're expending too much energy or giving something too much thought, but where we need to pull back our energy. We can also look at the pieces of figural candles, like this wing off the angel, and we can interpret that to mean something as well. We can look for symbolic shapes in the candle wax flows, just like we would read tea leaves, and interpret those symbolically. For more about candle divination, you can check out those in-depth workshops, Magic with the Candle Flame and Candle Wax Reading. And you can also check out the Book of Candle Magic as well. Now, this is the fun part, planning your spell. So before you create a complex spell, I always suggest that you sit down with a piece of paper and think about it before you start putting it together. When you're crafting a complex spell, it's a really good idea first to think about your intention beforehand. And then you can think about the different elements that you can begin to put into your spell to add that extra support. I recommend that you write your plan on paper or later record it in your grimoire. Write notes before you do your spell so that you can plan it out during your spell so that you can see if there's anything unusual with the flame or the wax burning or anything like that. And of course, after your spell, you want to record what the results were, what actions you took, how long it took, and so on. When you're recording this, The things that you want to think about before you get started are what type of candle you're going to use. Are you going to use a vigil candle? Are you going to use a taper candle? Are you going to use a figural candle, or types of candles? How many you're going to use? You also want to think about colors that you can bring in that are going to support your spell. The herbs that you are going to bring in to support your spell work, how many herbs, what type of herbs, what oils you're going to use on each of those candles, and then write that down so that when you read the wax later, you can say, oh yeah, that was the candle for my happiness. And I see this thing that tells me something about that aspect of my spell. Are you going to bring any talismans into your spell work? That can be things like roots or crystals or special charms or things that you might want to add to your spell. What about your timings? Are you going to use one timing, or are you going to layer a few timings to enhance your spell and to give it extra support? And of course, number shows up and everything in our complex spell. The number of candles, the number of days, the number in the timing of our spell, and so on. Finally, are there ways that you can enhance your spell work with layout? Can you sprinkle herbs in a certain design, or arrange your candles in a certain design that's going to add some extra layers of support to your spell? Finally, we're going to talk about recording your candle spells in your grimoire. So your grimoire is your spell work, and taking notes in your grimoire is really essential. You want to take notes before, and the notes that you take before are, for example, the objective of your spell, the start date and time for your spell, using those special timings. You also want to take, you might want to note an end date or a time for your spell if you're burning your candle for a certain number of days. What spell ingredients did you use? What candles did you use? What herbs, and all of the ingredients that you used in your spell? Did you create a petition paper, or did you inscribe words on your candle? You'll want to record that in your grimoire as well. Did you have any spoken spell words, incantations, or words that you said as you lit your candle? Did you use any numerology, and what was the significance of that numerology? Did you use a layout, and what was the significance of the layout? These are all things that you can note in your grimoire before you do your candle spell. You might also want to take some notes while your candle spell is burning, during your candle spell. What was your ritual like? Did something unusual happen? How are the candles burning? Are they burning fast? Are they burning slow? Did you do some flame reading? Did you look at those flames and see a strong flame or weak flame, or a dancing flame or a talking flame? If you're burning a glass encased candle, was there any smoke? And what was the smoke like? Was it dark? Was it thick? Did you have to trim back the wick, and so on? So you can note all of those things while your candle is burning. Finally, you will want to take some notes after your candle spell is complete. You'll want to do candle wax reading, do some candle wax reading and see what, your spell tells you. You might do some candle smoke reading if you had a glass encased candle. Did you see any spell results, your messages, your movement, your manifestation? When did these things happen, and what were these signs? And those are the things you would want to record in your grimoire. So here's what we learned in this workshop today. We learned about designing a spell, choosing candles, numerology in candle spells, advanced timings, multi-candle spells, multi-day spells, candle spell layouts, pyromancy, candle flame reading, capnomancy, candle smoke reading, ceromancy, candle wax reading, how to create a complex candle plan, and how to record our spells